Hey guys, what is up and welcome back to another video. This is T4C Culture TV and I'm Hotshot, and today we are going to be analyzing the clash between first and second in the Premier League as Manchester United beat their noisy neighbours Manchester City in a 2-0 win at the Etihad, bringing an end to City's mammoth 21-game unbeaten run. With Bruno Fernandes scoring from the penalty spot within the first minute of the game and Luke Shaw doubling the away team's lead in the 50th minute. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has gotten the better of Pep Guardiola once again, winning 3 out of the last 4 Manchester derbies. The XG indicated it was a fair result, with United having a 2.11 XG to City's 1.28. While the stats show that even though City had the lion's share of possession and more shots, they had the same amount of shots on target as compared to United. So what tactics did both teams use? Let's find out. Quick note, if you like this video, please make sure to drop a like and do subscribe if you're new to the channel, where we do match previews, reviews, tactical analysis, team analysis and much more. And do check out our podcast called the T4C Culture Podcast, where we cover awesome topics regarding football. So let's look at the formations and the lineups that both teams used. City fielded their 4-3-3 lineup with the usual back four. Gundogan, Rodri and De Bruyne made up the midfield, while Jesus started up top, flanked by Sterling and Mahrez. United fielded their 4-2-3-1 formation with Dan James, who's in great form, kept his starting spot. Tony Marshall comes into the squad because Cavani misses out due to injury. Now let's look at what City tried to do when they were on the ball and tried to build out from the back. Right off the bat, City were in a tough spot as they conceded as soon as the whistle blew. So they were on the front foot for most of the game, and this played completely into United's hands. Stones and Diaz would split wide, allowing Cancelo to move into the midfield as a double pivot, and Zinchenko moved up higher and wider. Man United would not typically be drawn into the press, as seen by their passes per defensive actions. Martial would look to press the centre back with the ball, with his cover shadow blocking the passing lane to the other centre back. As a result of this, Ederson would step out and help create an advantage and help distribute the ball out to the flanks. Rashford would come into the midfield to stay on Cancelo, while Bruno stuck on Rodri. Dan James would be tasked to press Zinchenko whenever he got the ball. Since Zinchenko was easily the target of United's high press, he could either move inside alongside the pivots, but he mostly tucked inside to form the third centre back to provide City with a stable base to build out from. If the ball went out to John Stones, Rashford would look to immediately press him. He was the pressing trigger, while Fred would take over and mark Cancelo. This led to space being opened behind Fred, which Kevin De Bruyne would often drop into, but this wasn't exploited enough. Higher up, United defended in a much more narrower formation, with James and Rashford being able to tuck in, cutting off the passing lanes to City's midfield. This led to United crowding the midfield areas, stopping City from being able to overload the midfield with their players. They also defended in a very high line. As a result of this, they had suffocated City's midfield. Stones and Diaz tried to bypass this by playing over the top through balls, but Lindelof and Maguire dealt with them well. Stones would also look to carry the ball forwards out wide, drawing out United's midfield and thereby creating space for Mahrez and Cancelo. This was evident with him having the second most number of carries with 11 in the City team, and he also covered a total distance of 531 yards with the ball, the most in the side. The double pivots in McTominay and Fred were to stay close to City's floating eights in Gundogan and Kevin De Bruyne respectively, especially if they were to push up and occupy the half spaces. They would follow them whenever they made late runs into the box as well. And if they were to drop deep to receive the ball, they would pass them off to the wingers to press them and disrupt them from having any time on the ball. McTominay in particular did a very good job in tracking Gundogan whenever the former made runs into the box. He finished the game with 6 interceptions, 2 tackles and 4 successful pressures. He also had the most number of touches on the ball in the United side with 60. Because United, and specifically Fred, kept things extremely tight in the midfield, De Bruyne would often look to drift either left or right to create space for himself to receive the ball. Once wide, Sterling or Mahrez would often tuck inside, making the fullbacks defend narrower. As a result of this space, he would be free to receive the ball and cross it. He finished the game with 10 crosses and 8 key passes, the most among the City team. He also tended to link up with Cancelo and Mahrez on the right and Sterling and Gundogan on the left to release them and put in a cross or beat their man. Also, KDB being out wide would draw the fullback out to defend against him, and this would leave space behind the fullback, which Sterling or Mahrez would make runs into. Gundogan often tried to make runs into the space, but McTominay, as mentioned earlier, was ready to track Gundogan into those spaces to try and intercept those through balls. Kevin De Bruyne typically was found on the left-hand side, as seen in his heat map. This was because City typically tended to play through their left-hand side, and Zinchenko was key to that, with him having the most number of touches on the ball in the City side with 120. And also the second most number of carries into the final third with 4. And because of Kevin De Bruyne and Zinchenko, they tended to create overloads on their left hand side and look to isolate Shaw 1v1 with Mahrez, so that Mahrez would look to take him on and put in a cross. Mahrez would also look to cut inside, creating space for Cancelo on the overlap to put in a cross. In the later stages of the game, when they were trailing, Pep brought on Walker and Foden and deployed them on the right and left hand sides respectively. This was done to attack the white spaces which were free due to United defending narrow. As a result of this, City had a couple of good chances to score. In the end, City were completely shut out by United, negating their most dangerous threats, the free aids of Gundogan and Kevin De Bruyne, and it was due to the defensive discipline of Fred and Scott McTominay. They dropped deep when required and blocked the passing lanes, and as a result, Gundogan was completely out of the game. Fred finished the game with 3 tackles won, 3 interceptions and 3 blocks. Also, the fact that United took the risk of playing a high line was clogging the central areas, and this led to City struggling to find answers to United suffocating the midfield. Now let's look at what United tried to do when in possession. United typically look to play on the transition. Either the midfielders or the defenders would win the ball back, and they usually look to find Bruno. He would receive the ball and try to play in either Rashford or Martial, who would be higher up the pitch. They will use their pace to take on City's back 3. But when building up from the back, United looked to play it short. Lindelof and Maguire would split the width of the box, and this made Luke Shaw push up high and wide. Shaw was the one mostly bombing forward, since Wan-Bissaka typically tended to remain wide and not venture forwards, as seen in the average positions. This was done to prevent Sterling attack the space vacated by him on the counter, and this was why United mostly played through their left-hand side. City would look to press in a 4-4-2 shape, with De Bruyne joining Jesus in pressing the 2 centre-backs, while Mahrez and Sterling were able to press United's fullbacks whenever they got the ball. This led to either McTominay or Fred dropping in deep to receive the ball and look to play the ball to the front 4 or to the fullbacks. This left City's midfield outnumbered 3 versus 2, as City tended to push their pivots onto United's pivots. This left Bruno in tons of space between the lines, and he was able to move either left or right to be able to influence the play. Also, Martial was able to drop into midfield to receive the ball and tried to link up with Bruno, Rashford and James. As the game wore on, Pep changed his pressing shape in order to not be outnumbered in the midfield. Jesus would look to cut off the passing lanes between the 2 centre-backs, while Gundogan and De Bruyne would press McTominay and Fred respectively, while Mahrez would press the centre-back in such a way his cover shadow would block the passing lane to Shaw. United used Mahrez's lack of defensive positioning and tracking back to their advantage, as Luke Shaw was often the outlet, being able to carry the ball into the midfield. And it was because of him that the second goal came about. Dean Henderson sees Shaw pushed up and decides to throw the ball over Mahrez and into Shaw, capitalizing on the fact that Mahrez is not defensively sound. Shaw gets the ball and immediately beats Cancelo, who pushes up to press him, and that leaves Stones 2v1 against Rashford and Shaw. Stones, thinking that Shaw would pass to Rashford, moves up to try and block the passing lane. Hence Shaw makes the run inwards. Diaz is unable to help out Stones because of Martial breathing down his neck. Once Stones changes direction to close down Shaw, he plays in Rashford. 3 City players immediately move to close down Rashford, thereby opening the space up for Shaw. And Rashford immediately passes it to Shaw and he is able to shoot. resulting in the second goal. This result was a massive one for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, whose record against the top 6 came under scrutiny. And this could be the catalyst that could see United finish strongly in second along with winning a trophy. Big up to him for outsmarting Pep Guardiola and ending his unbeaten run of 21 games. And as for Pep, it's not the end of the world. A 21 game winning streak is remarkable considering the teams they have faced over this run. They will still finish ahead of the rest of the pack in the Premier League comfortably, and they could even reach the finals of the Champions League, and that is still something to celebrate about. The man of the match is a tough one. From Scott McTominay to Anthony Martial, every single one of the United players deserved this. But for scoring a goal and keeping Riyad Mahrez, Cancelo and to a certain extent De Bruyne in check, the man of the match has to go to Luke Shaw. With Ole putting numbers in the central areas, he had to concede the white spaces, and he needed Luke Shaw and Wan-Bissaka to come up big time to stop City's wide men and the overloads. And stop them, they both did. Luke Shaw put in 8 successful pressures, the most in the side, as well as 2 interceptions. The man is silencing his critics and doubters game by game, and it doesn't look like he's slowing down. So that is it, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to leave a like, and as always, let me know if I have missed any tactics down in the comments down below, and do subscribe if you're new to the channel. And until next time, this is me, Hotshot, signing out. Peace.